Today we're building in the best small form factor case that will probably ever exist, the Xikii FF07. Xikii really went out and said, I'm going to make the best case ever, and then followed through with it. I'm absolutely blown away by the design and execution of this case. Nothing I say in this video will do this case justice. The care and attention given to it transcends anything I've experienced when building PCs. Here's the optional swappable grill for the Loki PSU that I'm not going to be using. I want to keep the aesthetic of the Loki, and I think it's going to look awesome when installed into this case. Here's the custom length 24-pin power cable, which I will be using. So the Astral card has a fan on the back of it, and I just want to mention these air ducts that are designed into the case for that back Astral fan to be able to move air. Even the space in between the vent for the CPU cooler and the PSU fan hole is solid, which is going to hide all the cables. It's brilliant. Everything is so well thought out. Every piece is so heavy, weighty, dense, it just feels awesome. You can hear the excellence. Most of the screws holding everything together are Torx heads, which is kinda odd. It would be nice if they included a screwdriver for them. I do want to warn you, this metal really shows my fingerprints. I wish I would have got some gloves to wear for this build, for your sake. Another little thing that would have been nice to include with this case is a little container for the screws. I ended up using the underside of the top panel to organize all of mine. Okay. Enough of me fingering the case, let's go over the build parts quickly. An Asus B850i motherboard, a 9800X3D, the ID cooling 67mm low profile cooler, 64GB of G.Skill Flare RAM, a crucial Gen 4 SSD, and obviously the Astral GPU and Loki PSU. Let's get this cooler made into the CPU. This cooler is the recommended one for this case. I had a Thermalright cooler that I was going to use, but Iga, the YouTuber, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name right, E-I-G-A, said in his video of this case that it wasn't compatible. So I Amazoned me one of these coolers. I actually found this cooler way easier to work with than the last Thermalright cooler I used. That one you had to mount from the back of the board. This ID cooling one is just easier. I would say that that's a little too much thermal paste. It doesn't hurt anything, it just makes it more messy if you ever remove the cooler or change the CPU, which I will be doing, so I gotta look forward to cleaning that mess up. You'll see here, I mounted the cooler on the wrong way. The fins are overhanging the RAM, but it should be rotated 180 degrees so the fins overhang the motherboard I/O cover. Ooh, that's mildly embarrassing. You'll see in a bit that the board cannot be installed into the case with the cooler this way, and I do end up flipping it around. Of course, when installing any cooler, always go little by little, screwing a bit down on each side to evenly distribute the pressure. If you're like me, you'll bend some of the fins. So have patience, be precise, don't be like me. Now let's get this slim fan fastened to the cooler and plugged into the CPU fan header so we can move on from this part of the video. So here's what I mean when I said the cooler was mounted wrong. The fan doesn't clear the bottom of the case when lining up the motherboard to the standoffs, so it's impossible to get the motherboard in and screw down the board. So I rotated the cooler and it fits like a glove now. I won't be able to get all the connectors plugged into the board once the board is screwed down, so I have to plug in the CPU power first. And that goes for all these connectors, fans, RGB, any connectors that are here. Let's get the motherboard lined up and screwed down. And I messed up again. I have to remove the PCI riser support and mount the motherboard to it first, because this support not only supports the PCI riser but also the board, and you have to install it to the board before. Well, now that that's behind us, I can plug in the riser. As I was plugging this in, I was waiting for that click when you insert it properly, but it never happened. It just never happened. Alright, time to mount the PSU. I'll have to remove the PSU bracket first so I can mount the PSU to the bracket. This thing is getting heavy. There's just 3 little screws holding the bracket in place. And this is the coolest part of the case. The case has to expand at the front to be able to get the PSU and the video card in it. A single screw holds it down, then, ooh, it's so satisfying.
I can do this all day.
Yeah, I know.
Alright, now let's plug the power cable in. Switch the power on the PSU to on and mount it. Now, let's tackle the cables. Front panel USB and the power button, the 24-pin motherboard power and the 8-pin CPU power. I plugged everything in, then undid it all a few times just to make sure everything fit as good as I could. There is a generous amount of room underneath the PSU to bunch cables up and hide them. I realized that there's this awesome cable channel for the 16-pin GPU power cable. It was a little awkward running it through the channel while everything was already installed. If I was to do this build again, I'd pre-run all my cables before installing anything. After a few minutes of fiddling around with it, I got it to a point where I was happy enough with the cable in this channel. Last up, the GPU. I'll have to remove this awesome PCI bracket first. And the Astral video card. This is the 5080 Astral. I imagine most people who buy this case will be using a 5090 because I assume, and I could be wrong, but But if you're buying a $1,000 case, I imagine you would not be limited on your budget. The only reason I'm using a 5080 is because I do not have an unlimited budget. I spend all my money on PC parts, so I'm broke. And the only reason I'm using this case is because Xikii was kind enough to send me one, and I will be eternally grateful to Xikii until the day I die because of this blessed PC building experience I've been able to have. Putting the GPU in the PCI slot wasn't too bad. It was tight and kind of hard to line it up at first just because you can't see too much, but once it was lined up and everything inserted, it was just solid. The clearances on this case are perfect. Everything is perfect. I've never had a more stable GPU when using a riser in my life. Just perfect. Well, this experience has ruined PC building for me. I truly believe no other build will compare to this. PC building will become meaningless, numb. I will always be chasing that PC building dragon, if you know what I mean. I'm just kidding. No case could ever ruin building for me, even though this is the best case I'll probably ever build in. It's like putting a sword back in its sheath. This thing is the Excalibur of PC cases. Hell yeah. And if you made it this far, I'm sorry about these disgusting fingerprints. Temps weren't as bad as I thought they'd be. CPU temps would spike up to 85 when gaming. I ran the cooler fan at 70%, which is kind of loud. An undervolt would be able to help out. I decided not to undervolt though because I'm just going to be taking this all apart soon anyways, but undervolting is definitely a thing to consider. These 3 screws actually screw into the GPU to hold it in place. Most cases overlook this.